I am a little goblin girl. Not the brave.
I'm due for one of these because it's been a while since my last Critical Role character breakdown, but I've been waiting to see what might just happen with Nott in these newest episodes because, oh boy, if you're all caught up, you know what might be going on. So, needless to say, we're going to be spoiling up to the very newest episode of the campaign, which, by the time this episode airs, will be episode 63 of Campaign 2. If you care about spoilers, please click away now. Alright, Nott, or should I say, Veth, our anxious ball of nerves, our motherly goblet of intoxication, and more importantly, our new greatest fear of abandonment. Nott's journey might be reaching an end, so I thought no better time than now to try and delve into what has caused us all to invest in her character so much. What choices has Sam made to, yet again, tear our hearts out with his player character? Well, there's lots to unpack, but I think what's most notable and probably the best writing lesson to be learned is how horribly flawed Nott, and how those flaws have ruined her own self-perception to create a truly nuanced character.
Oh, you're finally awake, I see. Oh yeah, motherfucker.
As we all know, Veth Bernardo grew up in the town in Felderwind, a relatively humble beginning. The only real threat to the town were surrounding goblin clans that would raid the town, so the only real genuine threat to Veth were the goblins. But more notably on a more personal level, she grew up with a less than positive self-image. Due to strings of bullying and teasing and name-calling by her brothers, Veth developed a sense of body dysmorphia and continued to perceive herself as ugly.
Being told that she was not pretty and not brave and not coordinated and not smart and just not.
So these two things were the main plagues of young Veth's life. Two simple fears. And it's just because of those fears that Veth became so skittish and nervous all the time. But despite this, one fateful game of Truth or Dare introduced Veth to Yeza, which gave birth to their son Luke. And they lived happily for 3.5 years. Years that allowed Veth to develop her nurturing nature by focusing on raising their son Luke and assisting Yeza in the lab. This is almost a story we've all heard before.
They dared one of their friends to give me a kiss.
Spin the bottle.
If everyone's favorite rom-com ended with the lead girl being reincarnated as a goblin. Because that's what happens, right? That's how Veth was turned into Nott. And let's take a second to just realize how truly bad this is. Veth has been afraid of two things her whole life, her own self-perception and goblins, and somehow fate fused both of these two things together to affirm her own fear and distaste for her appearance. But not only that, she was torn from the only thing in the world that helped her cope with said fears. And this was bound to mess with anyone and was instrumental in the creation of Nott as the flawed reflection of Veth.
It made me everything that I thought I was. Not pretty. Not good. Just not.
In an interesting manner, contrary to how he mentioned with Ford, who also had a substantial life before his encounter with the Mighty Nein, Nott is in several ways the opposite. Instead of happily leaving her disempowered life behind and being given an opportunity, Nott was thrown and ruined by her call for adventure, trying desperately to return things to the way they were before. Rather than a power fantasy, she is someone who had all her flaws dialed up, possibly explaining even more of their animosity towards one another.
I'm gonna cast Disguise Self and turn myself into looking just like a normal, like a halfling little girl, and spend just an hour at a cafe, just having a lunch.
But before we keep going, I need to have a quick aside about Veth's reincarnation. This is a really complex issue, and I'm going to try to summarize it as best I can. I know some people have an issue with Veth becoming Nott as a bad thing, in some ways eluding the goblin race as an evil race, which, in any type of storytelling, has never boded well. However, quite simply, it's hard to make race in D&D synonymous with race in reality. In real life, race is largely cultural, with the exception of how we look. The label was based off bunk science in the 19th century and trying to create a racial hierarchy. All the science has since then been disproven. That's why being racist is immoral and bad, because you're discriminating at someone who's biologically 99% the same as you, amongst other very, very important reasons. But in D&D, this is not the case. Race in D&D does have huge biological differences. Elves live to 1,000 years, while dwarves live to 350, not to mention their anatomical differences and even just the concept of overarching racial traits. It's not the same thing as, say, a Japanese and a Mexican person who are both ultimately human and the same, save for maybe their skin color. But you see the problem? D&D suggesting biological differences under the label of race is through language affirming that bunk science, which is not good. And honestly, you could just say species instead of race and the problem is solved. And please, I say this as a brown DM who's been playing for 3 years, who wants to tell my life experiences through a fantasy lens. And I know it's complicated, I'll try to make another video about it. Please don't harass or bother anyone on any social media to explain this if they don't want to. I'm sure even the way I've articulated the problem is in some way flawed, because I don't speak for everyone. All of this to say that the way Sam has chosen to treat Veth's reincarnation is pretty good. Also because Matt portrays goblins as a unique species in their own right. But Sam treating the transformation as an actual biological swap is an effective usage of the fantasy genre fiction, because these different species are biologically different. It causes Veth, now Nott, to fundamentally reassess who she is. And Sam has said before that
all of that shit, this is my choice. I don't know if this is how other people would play this. In goblin form, it is all super heightened.
Her drinking has surged. What was once a cute hobby of collecting is now a kleptomaniac obsession, and let's not forget her admitting to eating a piece of a baby, which, now that we know her whole backstory, is a little messed up. And these flaws aren't novel. Nott's biggest flaw is self-deprecation, which is, maybe I'm just saying something about my circles, but a pretty common character flaw. A lot of characters struggle with some aspect of themselves that they don't like, and probably even more writers attempt to embed that flaw into their protagonist as a cipher for their own struggles. Because it's multifaceted and can lead to various stories and struggles that don't always need to articulate in the same way. But it also occurs to me that because of this large saturation, some characters hit the mark more than others when tackling this flaw, and not 100% succeeds.
You know,
He could change me.
change you.
He could change this.
Firstly, because the flaw is very specific to her and intrinsic to her motivations. Nott's whole goal is to leave the body that she exists in because of her hatred towards it, and as an extension, herself. At first, it was a simple yet still understandable. Clearly, goblins weren't welcome in the Empire, so her being hesitant about her own appearance made sense.
Well then, someone's gonna play nice with the Crown's Guard.
However, soon, more and more details began to flow in about her personal dread living in a goblin body, stories about her time with her respective clan, and a desire to change her whole appearance permanently, adding another layer of depth and specificity and increased desire to change. If that alone wasn't enough, we are hit with the big mic drop of realizing this appearance was something cursed upon her. And as we've already mentioned, this was a blend of her greatest external and internal fear, a broken family, and a forced confrontation of all of her insecurities.
While she's casting, I'm going to start getting drunk.
Okay. No, I pull whatever you're drinking down.
I need it!
No, you don't.
There is no way by this point that the audience doesn't understand why Nott hates her reflection and her desperate desire to change it. The articulation of Nott's self-deprecation is specific enough for her journey to feel uniquely her own, but also articulated perfectly to not lose the relatability of your body betraying you. And how many characters actually manage to have their flaws interwoven with their goal? Not many, and not many this seamlessly. The continuation of this exact thing is a second point, the interweaving of Nott's personal strengths and her flaws. Too many writers treat their characters' flaws and strengths like they're two separate mindsets of a character, not the same mindset piloting the same character. Nott's strengths exist synonymously with her flaws. Her motherly, nurturing side to Caleb is not without a slight tinge of selfishness to further her own goals.
Why do you need him to be powerful?
So he can save me.
Doubled by her pushing Caduceus to stay close to him. She brutally murdered the baby of a manticore with full intention of angering the mother.
You want to save this thing? And I will slice down with my short sword on the baby.
And, well, it wasn't on purpose. Accidentally killing your friend is probably a no-no to everyone. Now, none of these make her evil, it makes her complex. And lastly, and probably most importantly, Nott's flaws aren't always funny. They're not always relatable because sometimes they're downright mean. And her self-deprecation is portrayed in a way that creates an uncomfortably real experience. And this is honestly why I chose Nott and why I chose her self-hatred, because this is supposed to be a universal theme. But with self-deprecation, a lot of media portrays it in a humorous manner. It's mostly hashtag relatable moments, it's FML, it's aren't I the worst? It's not this terrifying externalization of a deeply internal problem. Sam's characters have a history of this, of course, but Nott is very much the same, and he has not lost that ability to make his character's flaws actualized and specific, because it's not just about making your character unlikable. It's about understanding their biases and struggles. It's understanding that despite all the goblins Nott has met, she still carries a harsh resentment. It's understanding that she'd steal from the party to help Caleb get ahead.
What you would do with it? Study, learn magic, become more powerful.
But you wouldn't want me to have that sort of ability. You'd rather Caleb have it.
And it's understanding that Nott's anger at herself for not being in Felderwind would also cause her to lash out at Caleb, the person who she's, up to this point, sworn herself to protecting.
It wasn't you. You were made to do it. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I know you don't realize that now, but you will.
Trying to find out and harness the power of... What? It's your people.
It's because
it's the people that you know and trained with.
They haven't, like, he hasn't, in terms of...
Well, fuck him.
These moments are not funny, they're not played for laughs, they're genuinely a person's disdain for themselves being thrown at the people around them. And that step is difficult, probably because several people write about their own struggle, and it can be hard to have that perspective on your own shortcomings. But it's so important in order to allow these emotional beats to land. Or just simply, Nott's internal struggles carry with them an uncomfortable air of authenticity. And that's all on Sam's ability to meditate on what a character's flaw is and how it has defined them as a person. How pervasive is it going to be through their arc? What are they going to work through? What are they going to learn? And what are they going to keep with them? I don't know if Sam asked himself all these questions, but he certainly answered all of them by just playing through the game. And believe me, I'm so curious to see how things will end for Nott, because for all we know, in the next few episodes, she could be on her way out of the Mighty Nein, which means that the group will have also lost their respective mom friend, which I don't know how they'll not get on each other's nerves without her there. I wonder what her takeaway will be. Will she accept her current form and continue to live out her time with her family, or will she stay with the Mighty Nein, determined to return in the way she wants? I don't know, but I guess we'll see. In the meantime, let us all take notes from Sam about how to write our flaws. Not all of our characters need to see their flaws in their reflection, but you know, metaphorically. And of course, the entire cast does this. I just know this happens to be part of Sam's creative process and figured it'd make for a fun learning opportunity. So, thanks, Sam.
Case closed.
But until then, that's all I got. Thanks you for watching and sharing this critters, and I'll see you next time.